the Colts hope to be riding high with Anthony Richardson at quarterback. Here's a little Quentin Nelson, first-round pick from several years back, on the new quarterback in Indy as they finally take a break from one veteran after another and go after a rookie. Here's Nelson.
Really excited. Heard great things about him and his character and the person he is, and then seeing his film, you see what he can do on the field is pretty extraordinary. And I mean, he dominated the combine and did really, really well in college football this year.
I love an offensive lineman who looks like he just rolled out of bed and showed up, especially when he's really good like Quentin Nelson is. But Anthony Richardson, potentially great player. The Colts loved him. I think the Colts would have taken him at number one if they had the pick. We're playing a little game of which doesn't belong and why this morning, Peter. Of the three quarterbacks taken in the top four, Anthony Richardson, C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, which doesn't belong and why?
Well, I would just say Anthony Richardson doesn't belong, and here's why. I think he's the only guy who there's a question in my mind about whether he starts opening day. I think the other two quarterbacks definitely, well, almost certainly will start opening day. But Anthony Richardson, as Chris Ballard told me on Sunday night or Saturday night, whenever it was, as he told me, he said, listen, we got to get him in here and see where he is. He told me a story of Morocco Brown, one of his most trusted scouts in the personnel department, went to scout Anthony Richardson in Gainesville during the football season. And when he came back, he told Ballard, he said, Chris, I'm watching practice, and I am drooling over this guy. And I think the big question is, here's a guy, Anthony Richardson, who won 6 college games, started for one season, is incredibly exciting. In his last college football game, he completed 9 of 27 against Florida State. And look, you can pick out one game for anybody and all that. He's a tremendously talented person. But in my opinion, I think that the Indianapolis Colts have to be concerned with 15 years, not 2 years. And, you know, if they think he's ready to go on Labor Day weekend, he's the starter. And if he's not, and if he hasn't captured everything, or if they feel like he would benefit by watching for a while, then it's either going to be Minshew or Foles. And everybody said, oh, my God, you can't play him. You can't do this. You can't do that. You think the Jets might be questioning how fast they put Zach Wilson in the lineup? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. All I'm saying is I would say I would play Anthony Richardson if he were ready at the start of the year. And if he isn't, don't sweat it. Just play him when he's ready.
There's two types of teams in the NFL, teams that have franchise quarterbacks and teams that don't. In my mind, there are 5 or 6 franchise quarterbacks right now. Anthony Richardson doesn't belong among Stroud and Young because I think he's the one who's got the highest potential to become one of those short-list best-in-the-game quarterbacks. Will he? I don't know. There's a video on the Colts website, and it's on my list of various things to eventually get to, where Chris Ballard says on the day of the draft or in the draft room, basically, I'd rather take my chance with a potential superstar and be wrong about him becoming a superstar than pass on a potential superstar and watch him become a superstar on another team. So Richardson has stood out to me for that reason.
He said exactly that to me, Mike.
To see if he can. And it makes a ton of sense. It makes a ton of sense. Go ahead.
He said, I would rather take the risk that he might fail, than pass on him and see him become a star somewhere else. And that is one of the reasons why the Colts did what they did. All power to them.
And I give him credit for doing that because, you know what? From an owner's perspective, you can do that because if it doesn't work out, we'll be right back in that same spot, drafting high again, and can take a chance on another superstar. Ballard may not be there for the next time around. He's hitching his wagon to the roll of the dice that Richardson's going to become the guy. All right, Nick Bosa, the 49ers defensive end, recently told Yahoo that he doesn't think there'll be much of a change with Steve Wilks in as defensive coordinator in place of new Texans coach DeMeco Ryans. So, which doesn't belong and why? We're talking about the two NFC finalists, new coordinators, Wilks in San Francisco, Eagles defensive coordinator Sean Desai, Eagles offensive coordinator Brian Johnson. Which doesn't belong and why?
I would say Sean Desai, because in Philadelphia there was a sense that, and you definitely felt it from the fans, and in the wake of Jonathan Gannon going to Arizona, there is a sense that the Eagles say, not good riddance, but it's okay, you can go, for a lot of different reasons. But I do think that Sean Desai is going to have a chance to bond with his players and to become a powerful presence in that organization very quickly. Whereas, Brian Johnson was already there. They love the guy. They have total full faith in him. And I think Steve Wilks is the kind of guy, I agree with the guys on the 49ers who have said, we're not going to change much. Why would you change much with the 49ers? They're a great defense with most of the same pieces still there.
I agree with you on Desai. I'm going to say Wilks just to have a little variety in the conversation. Wilks is a guy who's been a head coach. He was the interim coach of the Panthers. The players wanted him back as the head coach. So the 49ers basically have two head coaches. They've got Kyle Shanahan, who can focus exclusively on the offense, as he usually has because he's had great defensive coordinators. But there's no drop-off here from DeMeco Ryans to Steve Wilks. There was no drop-off from Robert Saleh to DeMeco Ryans, and it helps to have great players, too. When you have a Nick Bosa, it's a lot easier to be a smart defensive coordinator, but Wilks comes in perfectly suited for the job, and the 49ers will be in good hands defensively. Jalen Carter, the first-round pick this year to sign his contract, 9th overall after the Eagles traded up from 10 to 9 with the Bears to make it happen. Which doesn't belong and why from this group of three GMs who are getting a lot of praise in the aftermath of the draft? Howie Roseman of the Eagles, Omar Khan of the Steelers, and Joe Shane of the Giants. Which doesn't belong and why?
Mike, I think all of them did a good job. So I'm not going to sit here and say, well, that was a dumb pick. Frank Reich said something to me the other day that I think is absolutely true. He said, listen, in the draft, it's important that sometimes you have to take chances. If everybody just sat there with the same board, picking the same players in the same order, I mean, how do you know that you're really ever, going outside the margins a little bit? You're coloring outside the margins to really try to get a great player. And look, I applaud Howie Roseman for doing that several times over the years, and he did it here. Look, with Jalen Carter at number 9. The Seattle Seahawks at number 5 needed a big, space-eating, divisive defensive tackle. They could have used Jalen Carter. They passed. The Detroit Lions could have used him. They passed. The Las Vegas Raiders at 7 could have used him. They passed. So I'm not saying that Howie Roseman did a dumb thing in any way. I think when you are as good as the Eagles are, and you have this pick at number 9, and you have an opportunity to take the guy who might be the most talented player if he keeps his head screwed on straight, then I'm not killing him for doing it. The only point that I would make is it's been very convenient in everything I've read to say, oh my God, what an incredible pick Jalen Carter was, and that was a fantastic pick by the Eagles. How do we know that? How do we know it was a fantastic pick? We've got to let nature take its course. We got to play 2 or 3 years minimum before we make any decision. I just went over the 2020 draft class in my column on Monday, Mike, and you saw it. 8 of the 32 guys drafted in 2020 are big hits, basically. And the rest of the 24 are somewhere between okay starters, good starters, to absolute failures. And so that's the reason why I think it is just absolutely precipitous to say, in essence, oh my God, Jalen Carter's going to be great. Have we forgotten what happened over the last 2 months? Why, if we focus so much on S2 with CJ Stroud, why have we all of a sudden forgotten all of the things about Jalen Carter? And again, look, I hope he turns out to be a great player. But the only people who know if he's going to be a great player or not right now are the people holding tarot cards.
Well, and the reality is, too, it's not just about the kid at this point. It's about the support system. It's about how they get the most out of him. You and I were both fascinated by the possibility the Steelers would land Jalen Carter some way, somehow, and they could have traded into that 9th spot if they had so desired, had been willing to pay the price. Mike Tomlin with Jalen Carter, maybe a different outcome than Sean Desai and Nick Sirianni with Jalen Carter. That's all to be determined. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.